Hey there, Steve Moran with another episode of Foresight TV. I am so glad you are here today. We know that not everybody watches, that our audience is very unique because they are committed to not doing status quo, but they are committed to making the lives of their residents and their team members better. One of the things I love and that we're going to talk about today is when people have a idea to do senior living different, better, more interesting in a way that they believe will serve residents better. And so we are going to be talking to Matt Thornhill with Cozy Homes. I'm actually totally in love. I hope you will be totally in love and love to talk about what it means to senior living. But first, we're going to start with this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. So, Matt, before we get started, I have to do a little commercial here. This episode of Foresight TV is brought to you by the Senior Living Executive Conference, which is the official meeting for Argentum. And I am actually looking forward to seeing a bunch of you there in a couple of weeks in New Orleans. The one thing I do want to point out is that at checkout, if you use the word Foresight, you get $100 off. And who cannot use an extra $100? So join us there. Matt, welcome.
Hi, Steve. Glad to be here.
So, what does that say? Openly gray on the back there on that cup on your shelf?
Yeah.
I love that. Great. So, Matt, tell me a little, let's talk a little bit about who you are, your passion, what you're doing. And I'm really excited. I know a little bit, obviously, but for the rest of the audience, I'd love to hear about what you're doing.
Sure. Well, again, I'm Matt Thornhill, and I'm actually not somebody who historically has been in the senior living industry. My background is in advertising and marketing and in consumer behavior. For the last 20 years almost, I ran a think tank called the Boomer Project. I wrote a best-selling business book called Boomer Consumer. It was all to help marketers understand how to sell things to people over 50. That Boomer generation actually had made the mistake of growing older. And by 2003, when I started the think tank, I had friends who were over 50 and they were being ignored by marketers. So I started a marketing consulting firm, ultimately turned into a think tank. And we ended up working with everybody from Google to Walmart to AARP to the Social Security Administration to help them understand how to sell and market to boomers who at 50 weren't dead, but they also weren't older. They weren't young anymore. And most marketers had kind of not understood that. So I was just there at the right place and time. And early on, the senior living industry reached out to us and said, hey, we need to understand boomers. And I said, why? They're not coming anytime soon. They're not old enough. And they go, no, but they're the decision maker for their parents who are coming to senior living. So that was my first foray into the sector, was helping senior living organizations and associations understand the boomer generation back in the early 2000s, maybe 2005, 2007. Jump forward 10 years to about 2016, post-recession, all of those things. We're still in the business of talking about the future and understanding how boomers are going to transform it. And senior living came back knocking on our door and said, hey, we need to understand boomers because, they're going to be our next customer. And I said, no, they're not. And they go, why? I said, because they don't like your product. They're not interested in coming to your product. They don't want your product. Now, they may need it, but they don't want it. But nonetheless, if you want to give me your money, I will help you understand boomers. So any good entrepreneur, I did that. And we actually did a lot of consulting work. Again, gave speeches about the future of senior living at leading age conferences, at American Healthcare Association and NCAL and state association meetings. And in 2019 alone, I did 19 different presentations on how boomers are going to impact the senior living sector. And during that time, I decided I'd reached the stage of life where I was tired of essentially telling folks what they ought to do and decided I wanted to go do something. And I saw a gap in the senior living sector that just wasn't being addressed. And that was people are not, building product that necessarily consumers want. I tell you, Steve, the most disturbing statistic that really woke me up was when I discovered that the median age of someone moving into independent living, that first stage, is 81, 82 years old. And they're moving in with ADLs and all sorts of issues. And they don't really want to move there. They move there mostly because they have to. But the gap that I saw was that there's no one's addressing the middle market. That middle market of boomers who I've been studying for 20 years, doesn't have income to afford the high-end product, makes too much money to qualify for the low-end product. So they're kind of stuck in the middle. And unbeknownst to me, Nick did their study and released it and talked about the forgotten middle, or I guess they call it the forgotten middle.
Yeah.
So I was just in the right place at the right time with a concept that I'd been working on. I went out and shared it with folks in senior living and said, what do you think about this idea of building cozy homes? And if you want, I'll just go right into explain cozy homes.
Yeah, let's do that. I've already got this long list of questions I want to ask you about boomers, but let's get to the cozy homes first, and this will really tie into that. So I'm looking forward.
Yeah, I'll give you the 1-minute definition of what cozy home is. So the idea I had was, let's build intentional communities with small homes, not tiny homes, small 1-floor homes, 1,200 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Let's have a master and a spare bedroom, primary bedroom and a spare bedroom configuration, or 2 primary bedrooms, so roommate situation. Let's put 8 of them together on an acre, put a 9th small building in the middle we'll call the common house, and call that a colony, and then put multiple colonies together to form a cozy home community, targeting that middle income and targeting younger than 81, targeting 60 or 65. It's really active adult with senior services wraparound, if you will. We don't offer any senior services on site. We partner with local service providers in a community and bring them in. If you think about, and you probably had guests on your show, Steve, that have talked about, the future of senior living is senior living as a service. Well, that works when you can aggregate a bunch of seniors in a place where the service delivery people can come deliver the services on a cost-effective basis. Having a visiting nurse go to point by point by point, they might get to 5 a day. If they come to my community, they can get to 8 people a day because I've aggregated the seniors together.
Right.
So there's a lot of things baked into it, but essentially the idea is to have people live together in community. They have to know that they're moving into a community where community matters. So if you're a hermit, you need not apply. We've got some tools that help people get to know one another very quickly. We've actually got some science and research behind techniques to do that. So it's not engagement, it's really getting to know your neighbors in a different way. And then one of the obligations of living in one of our communities is you have to give 10 hours a month back to the community. And that can be helping a neighbor with a chore. It could be helping the community with landscaping. It could be doing the books. So we have lots of ways that we're going to engage and give purpose to the residents because they are community members. They're not just residents, and they're certainly not patients. So that's the idea behind Cozy Home. My go-to-market strategy actually was developed when I was giving all those speeches, and I would share this idea with leaders in senior living. They said, hey, where are you going to build it? I go, well, I need land, and it needs to be inexpensive land because I'm trying to keep the costs down so that middle income folks can afford it. And they go, we got land. And I go, what do you mean? Oh, we squirreled away land for, this or that. Come talk to me when you're ready. So I launched in January of 2020, Steve. I had 8 different operators ready to talk to me at various levels of go to start pre-development work and really understand the concept, present to their board. It was awesome. And on or around March 16th, 2020, things ground to a halt.
They did.
But fortunately, that COVID fog is lifted. We're back in it. We have got projects that were in various states of go, including one that is in pre-development in Western Pennsylvania. That'll be the first one, hopefully, to go up out of the ground either later this year or early next year. And it's going to be 48 homes on a multi-acre site. We've got a joint venture set up with the landowner, which is tied to a university. We've got a senior living operator who's going to take on and manage the property and run it. but it'll be the first cozy home community in America.
And what are the, so it's a rental model and not a purchase model? I guess I want to start with that.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you ever see, I mean, if you're attracting people who could maybe live there for 10, 15 or 20, even 20 years, do you ever see I don't know, a condoizing or co-op type model where there'd be ownership?
Yeah, there certainly could be. Some of the markets that we're looking at, we actually are doing build to sell versions of this. It just depends on the nature of who the partners are and how they want to structure it.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
Okay. And what do you think the rents are going to look like? I mean, I know geography makes a difference in it, but sort of, can you give me some ranges?
Yeah, quite honestly, we're hoping to be at no entry fee, no upfront cost at all. Hopefully, a 2-bedroom, 1,200 square foot home at $2,000 a month, with maybe a monthly community fee of $200 or $250.
Right. And that wouldn't include meals or anything. You do your own meals, or you share meal prep together with other residents.
Right. Right.
So a couple of things that I'm just really fascinated by. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to tackle first. So I was at a conference. I think I'm going to go try this way. So I was at a conference, maybe three. Actually, I'm trying to think. It may have even been pre-pandemic, but Bob Kramer from Nick, founder of Nick, got up and he did this presentation where he believes that senior living needs a complete, massive reinvention in order for boomers to be attracted to it. And then right after that, there was a panel that got a little bit hijacked because Scott Stewart with Capital Senior Living, he's a capital provider, what do they call it? I'm not sure. I don't think I got the name quite right, but he got up and he says, you know what? I actually think that the senior living model that we've got today is just fine. Yeah, it may need a little bit of tweaking, but basically it's a good product for what it serves people's need. And so it was really interesting. And so they kind of went back and forth a little bit, but it sort of through the rest of the conference, there was quite a bit of talk about this debate, and it was all very friendly and collegial and all that kind of thing. So it wasn't like this hostile that we're used to, but it was a really terrific. It was a really, really terrific discussion. And I wonder if, when I think about senior living, so I'm 68. And I've still only got a few years before I'm likely to move into senior living, although it sounds like I'd be kind of your ideal target for a cozy home, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure that I really have a very good understanding of what I'm going to want when I'm 80. And I'm not so sure it's actually going to be that much different than what 80-year-olds today want. So I've done a lot of talking. I'll let you respond to all that.
Well, I mean, you make a lot of good points there. To be honest with you, the part of the senior living business that a lot of folks are in that really get to the assisted living, skilled nursing, memory care, that's not going to go away. That's still going to exist. And the opportunity that I see is one based on the fact that there are roughly 3 million people, 3 million beds that fall under some sort of supported senior housing, supported senior living in America, ranging from affordable all the way up to the highest of the highest end. Okay, what was the NIC number of the missing middle that's going to have a need by the 2030? 8 to 10 million, and then they updated and said no, it's really about 11.5 million.
Yep.
So you're telling me it's almost 4 times larger than the current entire universe of senior living today. So I'm not saying that senior living doesn't need to update and change in order to appeal to boomers, but there's so many boomers, and there's going to be folks that need their services. But what about people who want to find different housing? Where are they going to go if no one's building the type of housing they want? Sure, they're building that 4-story, 100-unit Holiday Inn Express with a pool and a gym in it and calling it active adult or independent living. It's like, so I'm going to sell my home and move to an apartment complex where I may or may not know anybody. That's not very appealing to boomers. What if I could sell my home and downsize and move into my own house? And this was designed and concepted before COVID and, physical distancing, forget social distancing. became important. You can have your community time and come together and live in community with folks, but you still have your own space. And every boomer thinks they're one in a million, so they need to have their own space. They're not going to be interested in being one of 100 on a hallway. So that's what I'm trying to do, is to build a product that people actually want, and want at the earlier stage of life than at the very end when they need it.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what I really like about this, Matt, is that about a year ago, I went and visited the first Margaritaville active 55 community in Daytona Beach. And Gary's got a great question, so I want to address that. We'll put that up just in a minute here. Okay, it's up now. But hold on to it for a minute, Jada, and we'll come back to it in a minute. But one of the things that what you describe in many respects is a more tight-knit community of version of what Margaritaville does. Now, they have some bigger houses there. You can even do swimming pools and that kind of thing. But there are a lot of really small homes, and really the idea is that you're going to live your life in community rather than isolation. I mean, if you don't want to have anything to do with anybody else, you're probably not going to want to go in to a Margaritaville, because it's all about community, very different. So it looks like it's sort of a different thought. I mean, do you see a comparison with that?
Yeah, yes and no. Initially, when we were thinking of the concept for Cozy Home, we said, oh yeah, we should build affinity pods, if you will, affinity colonies. This colony can be for the people that like the Pittsburgh Steelers. This can be for the Grateful Dead fans. This can be for all the foodies. And in my work with boomers, it's like we're more multidimensional than that. We're not just parrot heads. And Margaritaville, that's a lifestyle. That's a little broader than maybe just a hobby or an interest. But affinity groups, to me, are limiting. And I do think that it's more important that people know their neighbors, and know that they're living in a community where they can know their neighbors, and their neighbors want to know them. Because community forms kinship forms bonds support each other, and people support each other in that. So in a world where 40% of the boomers don't have spouses or partners, and a lot of them didn't have kids, where are they going to live where they can live in community? So I'm creating intentional community. It's not for everybody, but it's for people that want to do this stage of life together. It's almost like, back in the 60s when we all wanted to live in communes. Well, now that you're in your 60s, I'm going to create a commune for you.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I stayed at a Revel community a couple months ago in Arizona, and it's sort of what you're talking about, but the cost was 3 times what you're talking about. And a much bigger community, and it was lovely. And I think it meets the people who are living there honestly love it. So let's go back to Gary's comment that he put in a couple minutes ago, and let's talk a little bit about that. If you can pop that up, Jada. So isn't this what Del Webb did a few years ago?
Yeah, I don't know what Del Webb did a few years ago, but the whole concept from Del Webb was we're building retirement communities, and I don't know if I would want to even talk about retirement anymore, because retirement is a term that has kind of lost its meaning. It's really for this stage of life. How do you want to live at this stage of life? Who do you want to live with? And how do you want to be engaged? You've seen all the studies about, the evils of social isolation that gets translated in senior living to, we got to have social engagement. Well, all that turns into is, quote, activities. What I'm trying to do is to form relationships, and relationships is a different type of social connections, and certainly solves any social isolation issues. So it's just, I think it's a different model. And it's, Del Webb originally was all about come and live the good life and just put your feet up and play golf and play shuffleboard. And, so anyway.
Yeah. So my question.
Wait, one other quick point about the product that I failed to mention is one of the other things we leaned into. We kind of thought, let's skate to where the puck is going. What is it going to be like in 2030? And one of the things we decided was our homes are built in a factory. They're modular homes built in a factory and delivered and installed on site. Now, what I mean is they're a stick-built house. They're just built inside in a controlled environment. And they look just like a traditional home built on site. So it's going to be a different model that enables us to build it more cost effectively and to get it up quicker. Because while the foundations are going in, we're building the homes in the factory. So that's another factor.
Yeah. So can you talk about who your management company is for the first? Well, first off, where to say it was asked in the comments where it's going to be, and so if you can talk, just remind us where you're building the first one, and can you talk about who you're doing it with yet?
Sure. We're actually building in Western Pennsylvania, and I can't tell you who it is yet. We're not quite got our ink dried on that, but it's an interesting deal because we've got land that's being provided by one partner that happens to be tied to a university in Pennsylvania, so it's their land. We've got an operator who's a nonprofit operator that operates tons of communities in that region, and they've got one just down the street that's a independent living. So they're going to take advantage of their management skills to manage it. And we're going to build it and develop it, put the cozy home content in it, and then we'll essentially probably step away. So we're also doing working at various projects in Montana, in Georgia, in Florida, and in North Carolina. So we're all over the country. And we use local builders, local modular builders to build the product for us.
Yep. So did you see this? Please come to Florida. We need it here. Yeah. So sort of related to all this, and I think this is the question that I find myself thinking about. So I was in a conversation this morning with somebody who was talking with a couple of people. I want to sort of make sure I do this right to protect the guilty or the innocent. I'm not sure which. Who were experiencing large-scale assisted living, and they were finding that they didn't feel like they were being very well served because there were lots of little things they need help for. So as for instance, in one case, the one specific thing that was described was that somebody just didn't have the ability to go plug a plug into the wall anymore, and they needed to plug something in. And in a big scale assisted living community, that means pushing a call button, waiting for somebody to do that, maybe even getting an extra charge for doing that because it's sort of an extra service. And so what they were wondering is if they should be in a small board and care environment where there was just somebody a shout away who could just step in, plug something in, go back to working in the kitchen in a universal worker environment. And I will tell, and I've talked a lot about this in writing and on videos. My mom spent her last 8 months in a small board and care. She had a stroke, so she was not able to get out of bed. Her cognitive abilities were severely compromised, and she would not have been well served in a large assisted living. It would have been a terrible experience because she just needed somebody to stick their head in, every 15, 20 minutes and say, "Hey, Pat, how are you doing?" And to help her, and so I wonder, how do you see this sort of as people have these physical and perhaps mental cognitive declines? How do you see that fitting in the cozy home model, or will they have to move?
I don't know the full answer to that because I can't predict what it's going to be like in 5 or 10 years in terms of that. The intention of that volunteer time is we're going to create a time bank where people have time available and people can access that time. And studies have been done. We are more than willing to help one another. Now, I'm not asking somebody to come in and help me with my toileting or bathing, but if I need somebody to come plug something in a traditional community, I may not even know my neighbor, much less have enough of a gumption to, I feel horrible asking. I know that they would help. And studies say people are more than willing to help, but those other folks are reluctant to ask. In a time bank model, that reluctance goes away. So the ability to help one another through this stage of life is a tantamount to the success of Cozy Home. But the second thing is the truth of the matter is senior living and all healthcare services are being pushed to being executed at the home, delivered at the home. All the money that's being spent, billions are being spent by companies that are buying home health services and all that, CVS, everybody else is into this. and they're pushing it out. So we think that by aggregating the seniors together, the ability to come deliver those services, even maybe memory care services in a cozy home community, is going to be possible in the not too distant future.
Cool. I like that. So where does co-housing fit in?
Well, I mean, we borrowed from co-housing. Some of the things that we borrowed from them is the contract that you have to sign and the lease that talks about what your commitment is to the community. Now, you're not an owner in the community because that's what co-housing is, a co-op where you own the land, but it's not too dissimilar from co-housing in terms of living together.
Right. So we got about 5 minutes left. I want to see if you're willing. I would like to do a little lightning round with you.
That's fine.
So would you? What's that? Are you ready?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I see this last question that came up, our statement. I just wanted to say that we are partnering with anybody and everybody around the country to do this. We're not doing this on our own. We're partnering with folks. And I've got different partners in different regions. So if anyone's really interested, just reach out and talk to me. And we can talk about what you might need, or we could do, even in Florida. We can go.
Even in Florida. Perfect. Yeah. So I would really recommend, I think this is a great model. I think that, and I think what I'm hearing you say, if I can sort of recap this, is that you're not saying you're going to come in and necessarily displace what's already being done. What you're really just saying is there are people out there who are not being served with the current product mixes, and this becomes another product for people who want something different than what's out there today.
Yeah, we're not going to meet the need of 11.5 million people. Yeah,
that's right. Okay, so I've got a few lightning round questions for you in the last couple minutes. Just looking for a one word or a one sentence answer. That's all you get. Would you rather text or talk?
I like to talk to my text.
Okay, good. I like that. Favorite way to relax?
Crossword puzzles and word games.
Cool. Love that. Who inspires you?
Boy, there's a lot of people that inspire me. I guess folks that take risks and step out and try new things, and disruptors. I mean, there's tons of disruptors, because I'm not really trying to disrupt the senior living category, but I'm trying to change how we think about what we build for folks and how we build it. I'm trying to build something people want. I come from marketing, so it's all about what does the consumer want, not necessarily what they need. What do they want? Because I can sell it a whole lot more if they want it.
Yeah. So who would you most like to meet, living or dead?
Gosh, I think these days one of the most interesting people, good or bad, is Elon Musk. So I'd love to have dinner with him, pick his brain.
I would too. I am. There are lots of things I'm not a fan of about Elon Musk, but you have to admit he is a brilliant, brilliant guy. What's the hardest thing you've ever done, either physical or mental?
The hardest thing I've ever done? You mean besides this interview?
Yeah. Oh, come on. This is easy.
Actually, the hardest thing I ever did was to give the eulogy at my mother's funeral.
Yeah, I can hear that. So if you were giving advice to young leaders, what advice would you give them?
In this category or overall?
Any category, any category.
Geez, I don't know. We live in such an upside down, wacky world these days that's not like the world I came up in terms of people being on opposite sides on every issue, and it's a zero-sum game. I would just say play the long game, you know?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that what happens, we get so focused on things. And I know that one of the things, as I've grown older, I look back on my younger life, and I see so many things that we thought were so important, that were so critical, that my parents, and I actually went to a church boarding school my last year of high school. And, you could be in massive trouble guys could be in massive trouble for having their hair too long or for their shirts untucked. And as I was there today, over the last weekend, looking at the students, they all had long hair and untucked shirts, and it was just the look. And yet at the time, those seemed so important to us and so important to the adults. So I love that advice of look at the long game. So how do people get in touch with you? We've got Jada. We've got some links we can pop up here, I think, for you.
There you go. I'm easy to find. I'm on
and you're on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
You don't even know WWW there, Jada. That's old school. That's 2007 stuff there.
That's right. So if you've got a piece of land, you're intrigued by this, your developer, you want, this is a way to reach younger people. And I think, you know, the other thing we haven't really talked about, Matt, that I think has huge benefit for senior living is that length of stay, turnover, because people get old and frail and die or move to a higher level care is such a, it's just part of our reality, right? And so this is a way to tap into people earlier to solve the loneliness problem earlier and increase their life, the quality of their life, the quality of their health span. So I appreciated them a lot, and we are going to sign off now. Go check this out. And we're going to sign off with this.